The sun was a molten coin sinking behind the red hills of Dusty Creek, painting the sky in shades of gold and blood. The annual charity auction had drawn nearly every soul in town. The bankers, the ranchers, the gossiping wives in their lace bonnets, and the cowboys, each hoping for a little attention or a fresh start. Among them stood a man who didn't quite fit anywhere anymore. Eli Turner, a drifter with worn boots, a frayed hat, and eyes that had seen too many sunsets alone. His hands were calloused from years of labor, and though his face bore the scars of hard times, there was a quiet gentleness in his gaze, something that made people stop and wonder who he had been before life turned rough. He hadn't planned on being auctioned off that evening. The sheriff had volunteered him, saying it would build community spirit. Truth was, Eli needed the work. He'd been sleeping in the barn behind the saloon and eating what scraps he could find. When his name was called, the crowd chuckled, some women whispering behind their fans. A poor cowboy wasn't much of a prize in Dusty Creek. Then she appeared. Clara Bennett, the widow of the late rancher Samuel Bennett, stepped forward with hesitant grace. Her black mourning dress brushed the dust as she walked, one hand resting on her rounded belly, the unmistakable sign of her late husband's unborn child. Her dark hair framed a face both soft and strong, though her eyes held the weariness of someone who'd lost too much too soon. The town whispered about her, how her husband's ranch had fallen into debt, how she was barely holding on, and how she'd sworn never to love again. When the auctioneer announced Eli's name and the bids began at $1, most people laughed. Clara didn't. She saw something in him, perhaps the same loneliness she carried. Without thinking, she raised her hand. $5, she said, her voice calm but firm. The crowd went silent for a beat. Then someone snickered. Guess the widow's feeling generous tonight. Another man called out. Clara ignored them, her eyes locked on Eli's. Sold! The auctioneer barked, bringing his gavel down with a loud thunk. Eli tipped his hat, confusion flickering in his chest. He'd been bought before, for labor, for wages, but never like this. Never by a woman who looked at him not with pity, but with a strange kind of understanding. Later that evening, as the crowd dispersed and the sky deepened into indigo, Clara approached him. I need help on my ranch, she said simply. You'll get food, a bed, and fair pay. You can leave when you wish. Eli studied her for a long moment. Ma'am, I don't reckon you need a man like me hanging around your place. Town's already talking. They've been talking about me since my husband died, Clara replied. Let them talk. I just need help before winter sets in. He nodded. All right then. I'll do what I can. The Bennett Ranch was a shadow of what it used to be, fences broken, crops dry, and the barn nearly falling apart. Still, there was beauty in its bones. The wind whispered through the golden fields, and the porch creaked like it remembered laughter once lived there. As Eli worked through the days, fixing the fence, chopping firewood, and mending the barn roof, he began to feel something he hadn't in a long time: purpose. And Clara, she watched him from the window sometimes, her heart unsure of what to make of this quiet man who never complained, who spoke gently to her horse, who'd repair something and then disappear into the fields until sunset. One afternoon, as she was hauling water to the kitchen, she felt a sharp pain and nearly dropped the bucket. Eli was there in an instant, catching her elbow. Easy there, ma'am, he said softly. You shouldn't be lifting that much in your condition. She sighed, embarrassed. I'm fine, just not used to having help. Well, he said, giving her a small smile, guess you'll have to start getting used to it. That night, as the rain pattered on the roof, they sat by the fire. Clara offered him coffee and a rare smile. You don't talk much, do you? She asked. Eli shrugged. Ain't much worth saying most days. You work hard. My husband, he used to talk about men like you, said honest hands were the Lord's greatest gift. He looked into the flames. Your husband sounds like a good man. He was, she said softly, her eyes glistening. He was good and kind, but he's gone, and sometimes I think I died right alongside him. Eli glanced up at her then, his voice barely above a whisper. "You didn't. You're still here, still fighting. That counts for something." From that night on, something shifted between them. They didn't speak of it, but the air was different, the kind that hums quietly between two people who've both known pain and yet find peace in each other's company. As autumn deepened, the ranch began to come alive again. The fences stood straight, the horses grazed freely, and the small garden Clara had abandoned now bloomed with late-season vegetables. Eli worked from dawn till dark, but every evening he'd find himself drawn to the porch, where Clara sat with her hands resting on her growing belly, humming softly. "You sing nice," he said one evening, leaning against the railing. She smiled faintly. "Old habit. My husband used to say it calmed the cattle." Eli chuckled. "Guess it calms more than that." Their eyes met just for a moment, but it was enough to make her heart race. She looked away quickly, and he tipped his hat, walking off toward the barn, though he smiled all the way there. Winter came early that year, bringing snow that covered the fields like white lace. One stormy night, as wind howled and thunder cracked, Clara went into labor. Fear seized her. There was no doctor for miles, and she'd been alone for months. But Eli didn't hesitate. He ran through the snow to fetch hot water, tore strips of cloth for towels, and stayed by her side through every cry, every gasp, every push. When the child's first cry filled the cabin, Eli's rough hands trembled. Clara looked up at him, tears streaming down her cheeks. "It's a girl," she whispered. "Samuel would have wanted to name her Grace." Eli smiled gently. "That's a fine name." He started to move away, but Clara caught his wrist. "Stay," she said softly. "Please." He sat beside her, the fire casting golden light across their faces. For the first time in years, Eli felt like he belonged somewhere, not as a hired hand, but as part of something worth keeping. Days turned into weeks. Eli became more than a worker. He became a protector, a friend, and something Clara didn't dare name yet. When she watched him cradle baby Grace with that quiet tenderness, her heart ached in a way that wasn't grief. It was hope. One evening, as snow melted into spring, Eli stood by the corral, watching the sun dip low. Clara walked up beside him, her shawl fluttering in the wind. "I owe you more than I can ever repay," she said quietly. He turned, meeting her gaze. "You don't owe me nothing, Clara. You gave me something I never thought I'd find again." "What's that?" she asked. He smiled. "A reason to stay." Her breath caught. She reached out, taking his hand, the same calloused hand that had held her through the storm, that had mended her fences, that had rebuilt her world piece by piece. And in that golden light, under the vast western sky, Clara Bennett, once a broken widow, found love again, not in wealth or promise, but in the quiet strength of a poor cowboy who taught her that sometimes the heart finds healing where it least expects.